and speak on the same panel as the general. It is an honor. If I sound a little fuzzy, that's because in the past 4 weeks I've been in way more time zones than I can actually count, and I'm not sure what my body thinks I am or where I am. In flying here, I prepared just a little tick list of some of the things that satellite imagery can help in understanding the failed state index. If we go to the next slide, please. Before I dive into that, I have to give the obligatory DigitalGlobe, commentary about we're the world's largest commercial satellite imagery company. We have up in space right now 3 existing high-resolution satellites. In essence, we sell or provide to customers imagery with a ground sensor resolution of a ½ meter, okay, about 15, 16 inches. So from space, we can distinguish things. We can actually distinguish things a little better than that. This gives us a very unique capability. And the end of next year, beginning of 2014, we'll have another satellite. Next slide, please. This gives you just a little sample of what we've collected in a month. And this is actually an old sample. I spoke with one of my subordinates yesterday. Yesterday, we collected 2.7 million square kilometers of imagery. And we do that on a daily basis. It gives us access to information at a currency and volume that is unprecedented beyond some nations in the world, not every nation. Next slide, please. I'm going to present you with a series of slides which can give you an example of what we can do, and I'll have brief comments about them. But on that list that I compiled on the flight here, we in the past year have assisted governments, NGOs, charitable organizations, individuals, multinational corporations in a wide variety of areas. We've helped them identify stakeholders, and they as stakeholders, we have helped them understand what they're a stakeholder in and how it is developing, and the work there is impacting the local economy and the local governments. We've enabled these organizations to verify what they're doing, monitoring and evaluation of what their efforts are doing and impacting the nations in which they are operating in. We've been able to tell many success stories, which is very important for governments and multinational corporations and NGOs. It's important to have that success story told. We provide the ability to assist these organizations and these countries in the allocation of resources, which are often quite limited. In doing so, we help them develop best practices to continue their work throughout the world. We help in many ways, and the General touched upon it, and JJ touched upon it, indications and warning. Because we have the ability to look over large areas and repeatedly for many, many days, weeks, months, we have the ability to provide indications and warnings to organizations, allowing them to take preemptive measures to mitigate things. This is important. It is always easier to prevent something or deal with something in its earlier stages than deal it when it becomes full-blown. In essence, what my group is, and my job is to tell the story of imagery. This image you see here is Tahrir Square. It's interesting, it's a high off-angle image. You can see where the government, the army, is on the right-hand side, preventing the protesters from going anywhere, but they're not intervening. As the General said, they took a passive stance. And the fact that you could get this many people in one small spot so quickly, amazing. One of the interesting things about this image is that a CNN reporter called up my organization, my group, and didn't know where to go in Cairo. The problem was they were in the center of it. They couldn't see the big picture. Steve Wood, my boss, the vice president of the Analysis Center, actually stayed on the phone and told them where the hot spots were, and they deployed their camera crews to meet them. Next slide, please. 1 year later, Tahrir Square again. Looks very similar. The Egyptian people responded spontaneously. It's remarkable to see how people and countries will respond and the speed at which they respond, as the General pointed out earlier. Next slide, please. This is the Bab Ammar neighborhood in Homs. We watched Syria, and we continue to watch Syria on a daily basis. What you don't see in this image is the movement of the Syrian army into and around the city of Homs and later Hama. The pattern in which they operated in is very similar to 1982, when Hafez Assad was president and he sent the army in to destroy the Muslim Brotherhood. But we watched it. The reason this image is included is this is the Bab Ammar neighborhood in which the protests and dissidents were concentrated. The Syrian army came in and isolated the neighborhood, and then after they isolated it, next slide, they started shelling it. You can see the impact craters all around the fields. What it's more difficult to see is the impact craters in the city itself. Next slide, please. This is a false color infrared image, which allows you to better see the impact of the craters. You can see that they indiscriminately shelled the city. There are impact craters around the mosque, around the cemetery, around, well, it's not identified here, hospitals and clinics and schools, which are protected areas according to the UN. Next slide, please. This shows the oil pipeline that runs through the Bab Ammar neighborhood. At around 0600 one morning, there were 3 loud explosions, some smoke, and lots of flames as the oil from the pipeline spilled out into the ditch and caught on fire. The reason it didn't go any further was there are obstructions in the ditch. It's about 1,800 meters long. This smoke is blowing over the Bab Ammar neighborhood, choking the dissidents. Having been a fireman paramedic many years ago, I can tell you that this smoke is hellacious to be in. Next slide, please. I included this slide of Egypt, and I'm not sure why it's in this sequence. One, because it's an interesting image. But if you've been watching the news reports coming out of Egypt during the past week, there have been calls by members of the Muslim Brotherhood to destroy the Sphinx and the pyramids because they represent infidel influences. Next slide, please. Sudan. We constantly talk about Sudan. This is an image of the Jaman, I believe it is. Yes, the Jaman refugee camp. And this is only a portion of the camp. The camp is growing on a daily basis, just like the Yidda refugee camp. To see the streaming in of the people is humbling. That's what it is. It's humbling. We can actually count the number of tents. It's time-consuming, but doable. The size of the tents allows you to estimate the number of people that are in the tents and the function of some of the tents. And we can actually provide a relatively accurate estimate of what the demands of the camp are. We provide that to NGOs and to governments so they can respond. The next slide, please, a close-up of that facility. And in one fell swoop, we could actually look at the entire facility and give an estimate of it. We could also, through other factors and open source research, provide an estimate how effective aid is being provided. Next slide, please. This is the oil facility around Heglig, which is in southern Sudan, on the border of Sudan and South Sudan. This shows the oil production facility. This is the facility which was recently attacked and destroyed, interrupting the flow of oil out of Sudan. This is part of the fighting and the ongoing conflict between the two nations. This is important, one, in that it provides a slice of time view and understanding of what is happening. Quite often, we in the Analysis Center have the opportunity to actually look at the news and see the imagery from the same day and realize there is a distinct difference on what we see and what the news is saying. This is fact. We can actually tell. Next slide, please. Another shot of it. Next slide, please. And a final image of the facility. This allows us to provide, for example, the oil companies and the production companies with information as to what they need to do and prepare to get the facility up and running. Next, please. Speaking of oil facilities, the Punta Cardón oil facility in Venezuela. As we know, the Venezuelan government has been engaged in some unique economic activities, transferring gold reserves, improving or upgrading its oil exports, things of that nature. The ability to look at an oil facility allows us to determine if some of the reports we have heard are true and how that nation might be coping with economic crisis. Next, please. We can actually measure the volume of the tanks, indicating the oil reserves they have and the ability of them to earn foreign currency. Next, please. Oil pipelines. Many countries in the world are heavily dependent upon petroleum reserves and sales. You interrupt those sales, you destabilize or you contribute to the destabilization of the country. This is an example of an oil line being repaired in India. Nope, this one's Brazil. Next, please. Many NGOs, many governments spend tremendous money on long-term projects throughout the world in order to help stabilize those countries and improve the life of the citizens. Well, how do you verify that? Quite often that's difficult, especially in denied areas. Satellite imagery provides an opportunity to do so. Next slide, please. This shows a road construction project in India. Next slide, please. We actually take you through the different phases of construction, verifying that the contractor is doing the work in which they've been paid to do, and the status of the project itself. Things like this are important. Next, please. The Fukushima Daiichi power plant, natural disasters. The tsunami hit the power plant, took it out, and it started, I want to say melting down, but that was the wrong word. Started falling apart. This image shows, this next series of images show the power of the satellites we have, because they're not all taking the same picture at the same time. They sort of follow each other around the world, and we can image the same spot repeatedly. This is a minute before the number 3 reactor blows up. Next slide. Taken from a different look angle, but now we see the reactor is blown up. This information was provided to the Japanese government because they had trouble assessing what was actually happening in their own government, in their own country at the same time. Next slide. This shows it this year and shows the work that is being done. This type of imagery, this type of analysis, this type of work is done throughout the world on much smaller projects and on humanitarian issues throughout the world. Next, please. North Korea, certainly a denied area. This is the Nusong Reservoir. Now, this was taken, I believe, in 2010. We've heard of a drought. Could I have the next slide, please? This gives you an extent of the drought. This is going to affect their already deplorable means of feeding their people. And it's important to understand this so that we can engage in preemptive action if necessary. Next, please. Very recently, a flood in Russia. Okay? This was taken last week. This shows you the extent of the flooded area. Next slide, please. We look in, we see the, this one, let's see. Okay, this is the relief action in work. Okay? You see them, they brought in tents, they responded almost immediately to the flooding. An excellent response. Next, please. We still see some of the areas still flooded. We can provide information, we do provide information to multinational corporations, to governments, so that they can respond properly. Can they get what they want to get into the area? Are the efforts they are engaged in actually helping? Next, please. We see the facility on the outskirts of town and some of the efforts that are being undertaken. Next, please. Unfortunately, we also see the graves being dug for those who have been lost. Identifying graves is important in many areas for many reasons. One of the sad things that we do. Next, please. And that's it. How this affects and how this integrates into the FSI is that you have this overall ranking, a unique ranking that is valuable and starts the process for you or people who you represent or governments to dive deeper. What satellite imagery does is it provides people who are interested in projects that are being undertaken a real-time view or near real-time view that is unbiased and timely and accurate. Thank you very much.
Conflict analysis, and I was asked to talk about conflict analysis. Conflict analysis, at least in my line of work, is a collective term that describes various methodologies for participatory rapid analysis, or PRA. Lately, it's been adapted by the military. It's called TCAF. It's called DSF. And when you're analyzing whole countries, it refers to the Interagency Conflict Analysis Framework. But I was struck by the General's comments, and it's really a pleasure, sir, to be on the same podium with you. I was struck by your comments that what you do in intelligence and what we do in conflict analysis is essentially finding out what the story is. And it's identifying the dominant narrative within the story. The example that I would give is that if you're looking at a community, and this is normally done on a community level, if you can put together things, it's possible for a district. But it's hard to get much farther than that. But if you're doing these things at a community level, very often in a place like Afghanistan, you'll find that what you think is a Taliban problem is not a Taliban problem. It's a land rights problem, or it's a tribal problem, or it's a Guam problem. You have to pick out the narrative, because that's going to allow you to do the design and the types of interventions, the kind of implementation that you need to do to address what the dominant problem is. And usually what we're trying to do is bring stability to a community and to create cohesion within a community for various purposes. In the case of Creative, the company that I'm here representing, we work in a lot of bad places. We're working in Afghanistan, we work in Pakistan, we're working in Yemen, and a number of others as well. We use conflict analysis, and we use it primarily so that we can do good designs and we can do good implementation that addresses what the real problems are. And increasingly what we find, because we do work in dangerous environments, is that we're employing more and more technology to do the work that we have to do. I've been very fortunate in working with the University of Alaska. This is something that's come up fairly recently, but working with a small group at the University of Alaska that's made up of people from really disparate backgrounds. There are only 2 of us in the room who've actually worked in conflict analysis. But there are people from Stanford University that do lab work, that create devices. There were people who were working with systems on behavioral analysis. The idea, and what we've identified as a program to work on, and we had a number of different options, but to work on conflict analysis, but particularly how you can use new technologies. And in many cases, these are soft technologies as opposed to hard technologies. But how you can use them to what I would describe as conflict analysis on steroids. And some of the tools that we're looking at using are drones. That's one. Behavioral analysis is another. Being able to put things together using technologies such as heat mapping. In all these cases, what you're doing is trying to identify the drivers of conflict and instability. But technology can help you in discovering those, because it lets you know things that are going on around you that you can't necessarily see. Let me give you an example. How many of you use Twitter? Mostly the younger people. How many of you are using Twitter right now? Okay. You're lying. You're doomed. The general knows this, but I didn't know it until a few weeks ago. One of our participants who has a lab at Stanford, but also has a company that makes various devices and does various things, he said, I want to show you something. And he pulls out a laptop, hooks it up to their server. He said, oh, the server's a little bit slow, but I think it'll work anyway. Pops up on this big two screens we were looking at, and both of them had a map of the world on it. And when you look at the world, in various places, you see these little bubbles popping up. And he said, those bubbles are Twitter feeds in real time. They're happening right now. He said, where would you like to go in the world? I said, oh, let's try Tahrir Square. And so, actually, I said Cairo first. He said, what part of Cairo? I said, well, let's go to Tahrir Square. I lived in Cairo for 5 years. I couldn't be more esoteric, but Tahrir Square sounded a little bit more interesting. And as he starts to zoom in on Tahrir Square, these tweets start appearing. Most of them are in Arabic, but he says we can translate those. Yeah, push a button. Some of them are in English. All of them have the GPS coordinates, of where the people, exactly where the people are, and these are happening in real time. He wasn't going through Twitter to get those. And when you look at it from the point of view of, most of you are probably thinking in terms of I did, oh my God, what does this do to privacy? I asked the question, I said, I'm assuming if you can pull up tweets and you can pull up emails. Yep. And I'm assuming if you can pull up the emails, you can pull up mobile phone conversations. Yep. And the question then arose, in the discussion is, you may not like the sound of this, but if you're going into a remote village, or maybe not so remote village in Afghanistan, it can be very useful for you in terms of situational awareness to know what people are saying around you, where they are. Very often we go into a community, the Taliban either stays there and they're not identified, or they move off to the side. And if we can know what they're saying and where they are, it can be of use in terms of figuring things out. There was another group there that has a technology. It's actually a soft technology and a training methodology that they're using with the SEALs and they're using with the Marines right now. It hasn't been scientifically validated, but it's one of those things they know it works. And basically what they say is, we can read your mind at 800 meters, 8 miles, or 8 feet. And the program was, I asked the question, I said, was this done by social scientists, by cultural anthropologists, or what? He said, no, it was done by a detective, a retired detective from the Los Angeles Police Department, but we know it works. And the kind of things that they were showing is that if you have a room full of people like this, and the leaders of the room want to, or the group want to hide themselves, or they do not want to be identified, you can find the leaders by watching everybody else. And sometimes that's a very valuable thing to know. If you have people in the middle of the night that are laying an IED, or you think they're laying an IED in the middle of the road and you've got a drone that's watching it, it may not be clear to you whether they're putting in a culvert, or they're putting in an IED. But according to them, you can tell by their body movements and the way that they behave. You can get about 90%, 99% read on what it is they're actually doing. Some of these things are kind of scary, but they're also very, very useful to us. And I'm interested in continuing this trend to see how we can do this better. Because honestly, in the places that we work, if we don't know the story, if we don't get the story, and we don't get the dominant narrative, then we're going to do the wrong things and we're going to fail. I think I'll stop right there and leave it to questions and answers. Thank you very much.